Good afternoon, college students. Okay, so you have nothing due for me today. That's got to be nice, huh? Yeah, all right. Okay, so here's the deal. Yesterday, you may remember we did a Zoom poll at the end, and that poll was for class structure. And one of the questions was, do you want lectures delivered live or recorded? And it was basically about 50%. So last night, as I was planning things, I thought, I think what I'll do is I'll mix it up. So there'll be times I maybe deliver some lecture notes live, and then there'll be times where I'll just have you view them at your leisure. I'll post a recording, right? So what I'm going to do is basically do both, okay? Once again, times that lectures will be live, and then they'll just be recorded. Now, even when I do deliver a lecture live, I'm going to record it, okay? So for people who are absent, or for those who just want to view it later. And every lecture I do want you to post a reaction to it. So I'll post it on Google Classroom, whether it's live or recorded, and then I'll want you to post a comment or question about the lecture. That way, you know, get some commentary from you, some comments from you, some questions. Maybe in some respects better than if I was giving this to you in the classroom and kids weren't asking me questions during the lecture, which sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, right? So just be aware of that. I'm going to give you 10 points for listening to this lecture and posting a comment or question to it on Google Classroom once I post the recording there. Make sense? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and deliver this now. Hopefully you'll do your best to pay attention, but it will be recorded for you later, right? If you're deciding to multitask a little bit. This is a pretty short one too. This one mostly focuses on the colony of Jamestown, and it's gonna bring up some stuff from chapter 2. I didn't give you any lectures last week, so I do have kind of 2 coming up with chapter 3. But what I've got here is stuff coming from chapter 2 and transitioning to 3. And then there's more things I want to say about 3 potentially later this week yet. So you might get another lecture to listen to this week as well. Okay, so let me share my screen here. And it's up to you. You know, this is different. You may remember when you were sophomores, those of you who had me as sophomores, I required you to keep a notebook, right? And I made you take notes and I graded it. College is different. You know, and you'll find that out. And some of you have probably already taken college courses. You know, you're kind of on your own a little bit, and you write down what you think is important or what you don't know. So if you want to write this information down, feel free. It will be posted on Google Classroom for you. You know, I had some professors in college, you know, being a history major, you know, I got a lot of lecture. I had some professors in college who just rambled on with no visual aids, and you're fiercely writing down everything that you can because you don't know what they're going to put on the test, and there's no study guides and all that. So you ended up studying a lot of notes, and you hope that had you prepared for the test. But that was 25 years ago. Man, I'm getting old. Okay, so the title of this, as you can see here, is Early English Colonies. Okay, so I'm going to tell you some things about England's first attempts at colonization. Obviously, England exploration is particularly important for our origin as a country and our ancestry. So probably the one we focus on the most. We've spent quite a bit of time talking about Spain, but let's take a look at the English. Okay, and this is very watered down. Well, you know, maybe there's a little bit more of a story of the story of Jamestown, but there's always more you can say about these events. So now you have to remember, and if I go too fast, you can slow me down. If you have a question, chime in. Tell you what, let me enable the chat here in case you have a question through the chat too. So I'll try and have that kind of tucked away over here in case you have a question. Hopefully I'll see it pop up on the chat over here. Okay, so now please remember, kids, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, right? Okay, and that led to a huge transformation of world history and the Columbian Exchange and all those things. The English actually weren't that far behind in terms of exploration. At the end of the 15th century, John Cabot will be hired to explore the North Atlantic. Now, this isn't the best map on the planet. It does show Columbus's voyages here to the Caribbean islands, right? John Cabot's up here. So I don't know if you can see this orange line here, but this is John Cabot. And he's going to claim some land for the English in what will become Canada. He's going to explore the North American coast and claim some land there for Canada. Now, tragically for John, he will disappear on his return voyage in 1497. We really don't know what happened to him. Maybe he got swallowed by a whale or something like that. We really don't know. But although I haven't researched this extensively, maybe there's some new theories online. If you're interested in that, you can take a look. But anyway, he begins English exploration. Now, the first attempt, although some historians dispute this, the first attempt at English settlement was in 1585, and it was the colony of Roanoke. There are some historians who assert that there was actually an attempt off the coast of Newfoundland that occurred, but there's really not much to that. It's more of an exploration. So most historians still give Roanoke as kind of like the first attempt at English colonization. That's going to happen in 1585. Sir Walter Raleigh will be the leader of that undertaking. Walter Raleigh is the driving force behind the colony. He is a favorite of Queen Elizabeth, and he's going to name the region Virginia in honor of her because she was supposed to be the Virgin Queen, even though she probably wasn't, but I digress on that. Anyways, that's where we get the name Virginia from. And Roanoke is going to be settled in 1585 by soldiers and settlers. If you've been to the Outer Banks, like I have many times, the Outer Banks for me, pictured here, right, is kind of my second home. I've been there so much. It's a popular family destination. We go there every other summer, every few summers. I've been doing that since I was a kid. Love the Outer Banks. You've heard of the drama, The Lost Colony. You've probably seen that advertised there. That's about Roanoke. This colony is going to disappear. Okay. Now, Roanoke, the original goal of it was to become a base for pirate ships that would raid Spanish ships for gold. And the most famous pirate who will become a knight to mention in this is Sir Francis Drake. Roanoke will not be a successful place to raid Spanish ships because it's not going to last. But I think it's important to mention here that the English, Spain was way ahead of the English in terms of acquisition of gold. Okay, and England was trying to catch up. And they were doing that by basically using pirates and raiding Spanish ships. And Sir Francis Drake was the most successful at this. Roanoke had very little to do with it, however. Now, Sir Francis Drake, some of these guys are great adventurers. I'm surprised there's not a lot of movies made about him. Although Sir Francis Drake he was also involved in slaving, so he might be a tough guy to make a movie about, if you want to portray him as a good guy. But, so he was involved in slavery. He was involved in raiding Spanish ships. What else did I write here? He's going to become knighted. I thought there was some other adventure I mentioned here, but no, I don't see it. Anyway, he was the first Englishman to circumnavigate the globe. So quite the adventurer, right? Anyway, back to Roanoke. Now, relations with the local Indians, the Roanokeans, or the people of the Roanoke colony, could have done a better job of establishing relations with the local Indians, who are the Croatoans. The relationship is going to be poor. And when you read about colonization, it's not good to have poor relationships with Native Americans because they're often your food source. They help you survive, right? And then, of course, you kill them later, but that's kind of how the story goes, right? So the relationship was not good, and this may explain their eventual fate. Communication with England was poor in these years. We're talking about 1587 to 1590. England was at war with the Spanish. Actually, the way the story goes is John White, who was the mayor of the colony in 1587, left. He went back to England to acquire more manpower, and he won't return until 1590. So he's gone for 3 years. And part of the reason why he's probably gone for so long is because England is at war with the Spanish. It's hard to, voyage when you might get sunk, right? So he's gone for 3 years. And when he returns, everybody's gone, including his wife and children. He left his wife and children behind. They're gone. Everybody's gone. So of course the colony is seen as a failure. There's a lot of theories to this. I didn't do extensive research last night. I briefly read the beginnings, of a few articles. Probably the most prominent theory is that they were killed by Indians. There is a theory that maybe they joined Indians to survive. That actually happened more than you thought, where colonists will join and become part of the Native American tribes, particularly with women. Women often had higher status in Native American tribes than they did in English colonies. So there's a lot of cases of women joining Native American tribes because, quite frankly, they were treated better. Kind of an interesting dynamic. So there are theories that. Another theory is they're killed by the Spanish. They were at war, and Spain had a colony in Florida at the time, St. Augustine. So maybe they came up and killed them. Who knows? Or another theory is that they were lost at sea. They tried to return to England and they were lost at sea. So a lot of different theories there. And there may be more. If you're interested in this and you want to take a look at it, you can. You do have to do a research paper in here. Maybe this is something you could do. Okay. All right, now Jamestown. So the focus of this lecture is on Jamestown. Jamestown is considered the first successful English colony. Now, if you notice, successful is in quotations here because there's going to be a lot of heartache, a lot of struggle in Jamestown to make it successful, a lot of loss of life. Slavery is going to be introduced in 1619 in Jamestown. So there's a lot of tragedy involved with it, but it can be considered to be the first successful English colony simply because it lasted and eventually became profitable. Now it's going to be organized by the Virginia Company of London. The settlement is going to be founded in 1607. Now these Virginia companies are often thought of as kind of the first stock companies, the first corporations, because people literally invested in them. Kind of like we invest in stocks now and we get a percentage of the profits. That's what was happening in a lot of these colonies. These colonies weren't necessarily being founded by the governments of England, although the governments of England may have had something to do with allowing them. They were often founded by companies from England. Okay, so this was a joint stock company or corporation called the Virginia Company of London that is investing in colonization in Virginia. Okay, all right, many problems. First of all, it's in a swamp. Not necessarily the best place to settle, especially if people aren't interested in working too hard. Okay, so it's easy to defend. It's in the Chesapeake. Let me go back to the map for a moment. Here's a Chesapeake Bay, right? Okay, so good location in terms of easy sail in and out, a good place for defense, but it's it's not the best location in terms of soil and things like that. So it's in a swamp. The swamps bring heat, swamps bring insects, swamps bring disease. Okay, not good. Okay, and the other issue is a lot of these people didn't understand how hard they were going to have to work. I think they were expecting it to be like, Cortez and the Aztecs and Pizarro and the Incas and all those conquistadors who found a lot of gold. That wasn't going to happen in Jamestown. Okay, and a lot of these gentlemen, the issue was, and I have read a couple books on Jamestown, and it is an interesting story. Well, of course, I'm a history geek saying that, but it is an interesting story. The issue is they came to search for gold, so they didn't want to do the work that was required to make it successful, right? They didn't want to dig fields and cut trees and hunt for food and for that matter, even establish positive relationships with Native Americans who might have helped them out. I mean, the joke is the Powhatan Indians were they didn't attack Jamestown early because they were just killing themselves. So why bother to go to war with these people? They're idiots, right? They're dying because they're too stupid to do what it takes to survive. Okay. Once again, just hoping to walk around and find gold, I guess. Okay. And they weren't doing the work that was necessary to allow for the survival of a colony, particularly before winter set in. Okay. So they're unable to survive without help. Now, of course, who do you turn to for help in European colonization in North America? You turn to the people you're going to eventually turn against. They eventually did turn to the Powhatan Indians, and they will come to rely on food from the Powhatan Indians. Okay. Now they're going to be led by Chief Powhatan. Now that's actually not his name. That's what the Jamestown colonists called him, Chief Powhatan. That's the name of his tribe, the Powhatan Indians. His name was Wahun Seneca. I wouldn't worry about writing that down. Chief Powhatan's fine. Okay, but his real name was Wahun Seneca, so maybe that's why they just called him Chief Powhatan. Now, the Powhatan Indians, Chief Powhatan, very organized confederacy, powerful confederacy, in charge of many different tribes. Okay, kind of a confederacy, a loose alliance of tribes that existed in the Chesapeake Bay area, and Chief Powhatan was in charge of it. The other tribes had to pay tribute to him. Okay, he was a great leader and very skilled at manipulating the English, providing them with food when it suited him, taking away food when it suited him, right? So he has the upper hand early in Jamestown in terms of negotiation. Okay. Really, probably his biggest mistake is he should have just killed everyone in Jamestown, but he didn't think he needed to because he thought they were going to kill themselves. So Jamestown needed a leader who could take care of Jamestown, okay, and not turn into a potential adversary. And that, of course, is John Smith. I'm sure you've probably heard of John Smith. Now, John Smith, like Sir Francis Drake, kids, he is not a boring person to read about. He is quite the adventurer. I don't know how there haven't been like 4 movies made about John Smith. He was in the Crusades. He was captured by Ottoman Turks and was a slave for a while. I mean, it sounds like Gladiator, right? Escaped from slavery, fought in Africa, had adventures in Africa, and then of course he's going to have adventures in the Americas as well. And he wrote much of this down. His books that he wrote himself sold in the time period. And of course, you have to verify the accuracy of these things, but historians have put a lot of time into that. So John Smith, besides being the most common name in the world, right, or one of the more common, was quite the adventurer. Okay. Now, you know the story. Maybe you've seen the Disney movies, right? Okay. He's going to be captured by the Powhatans and he's going to be sentenced to execution. He may or may not have been saved by Pocahontas, as dramatized in this image here. You see Chief Powhatan in the background, right? The most accurate, or the historian that seems to be the historical interpretation that seems to be the most accurate with this John Smith incident is that this was a type of ceremony. Okay, this was a ceremony that occurred that allowed for Chief Powhatan. Chief Powhatan had never had any intention of killing him. This was all choreographed, all staged. It was a mock ceremony. Pocahontas did put her head, according to accounts, she did put her head down in between John Smith and the action. Oh, don't kill him, that type of stuff. She was very young at the time, so they did not develop a love affair, as the Disney story goes. She was like 10 to 14, I forget the exact age. But really the purpose of this whole ceremony was Chief Powhatan demonstrating how I control these events. I have the power to grant you life or take it away. I am in charge here. So this is kind of a ceremony of bravado, right? I am the man in charge of this, right? Now, John Smith is pretty skilled himself, and he will develop a relationship with Chief Powhatan and the Native American tribes, and with Pocahontas, but not a loving relationship, a hey, how you doing relationship, okay? And that's all Disney myth, okay? Although the myth came out before Disney. Okay, so let's look at their troubles and see how John Smith helped preserve the colony. May of 1607, we have 101 settlers in Jamestown. By January of 1608, there are only 38 left alive. Now notice those months there. They arrive in May, right? And they have all this time to prepare for winter, and they don't do it. Winter is when disease really takes its toll. I mean, we're worried about a second wave of this pandemic with winter coming, right? Hopefully that won't happen, okay? January of 1608, there's 38 left alive. Now, some people are going to die. I mean, you know that in colonization, people are going to die because it's going to happen, but that's pretty bad, okay? Smith gains a position of leadership, and as I mentioned, he's skillful at negotiating a trade system with Powhatans to gain more food. They don't have any food of their own because they were too busy, I don't know, looking for gold or just being lazy to prep their own food, clear the swamp, all that stuff, okay? Now, John Smith, to be a good leader, you can't always be liked. Some of you have the potential, and some of you already are leaders, right? Or you're going to become leaders. Leaders have to make the tough decisions. They can't worry about everybody liking them all the time. So he made this, it sounds ridiculous, right? He implemented this no work, no food policy. He that will not work shall not eat. In other words, if you're just going to look for gold, or if you're just going to sit on your butts, you're not going to eat. Go ahead and die. Okay. Which you think that would have made sense in the first place, but he's kind of enforcing this. And so what we see is an improvement, maybe not much of an improvement, but it's because of John Smith that the colony is able to survive. Okay, so let's look at Smith. So now let's go to December of 1608, okay, May of 1609. We see much better death toll figures here, right? Only 12 losses. That's pretty good. But Smith is unpopular, right? He's a leader who makes people do stuff. Think about how, don't make it, think about sometimes maybe some class you've been in where kids complain about doing work. Oh, I got to write 5 sentences, right? Okay. John Smith is making people like hoe gardens and stuff, okay? Now he leaves in 1609 to get treatment for an injury. And there's a little bit of mystery about this. He fell asleep on a boat. It might have been on a fishing expedition or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Gunpowder blew up and his leg was damaged. He has to go to England. If I remember correctly, it's infected. It needs to be treated by whatever medical advances they have at the time over there. Probably not much, but better than what they have in Jamestown. So he leaves. He leaves and people get lazy again. And we have the worst year of Jamestown, right? The starving time. Now notice in these numbers, kids, people are still coming. People are still coming, right, to Jamestown. All right, so in December of 1609, we've got 500 settlers, and by May of 1610, 100. So things were obviously better when Smith was there, but he's unpopular. And some of it is a rivalry for leadership. Okay, speaking a little bit louder because my printer's going off behind me here. So some of it is a rivalry for leadership. So there are some people who want to lead who don't like John Smith. They think they should be in charge. So some of that's going on here too. There was a character in the Disney movie, I can't remember his name, but who played that. But anyway, I don't know why I keep referring to the Disney movie. Okay. All right. So the key to survival of Jamestown. So John Smith is gone. He's going to write a book about his adventures now. But another John is going to be key to the survival of Jamestown. Now notice, I already mentioned this with the numbers, but colonists continue to arrive. People are continuing to invest in Jamestown, but you also have to remember the conditions back in England. Okay, think about the article you read by Dr. Stannard, The American Holocaust. He spends the first part of that article talking about conditions in Europe and how bad they were. So even though there's these stories of, and the British government is probably issuing some propaganda and covering things up, but even though people are dying in Jamestown, people still want to get out of England and are hoping for a better way of life in Jamestown. Okay, because conditions aren't great in Europe either. Okay, the crop that's going to save Jamestown is tobacco, something that addicts and kills people, right? But that is going to be the first successful crop by Europeans in North America, and what will become our country, kids. The first successful crop will be tobacco. And despite its heavy regulation today, it's still a crop that does quite well and is sold throughout the country. Okay. John Rolfe basically smuggled tobacco. He wasn't supposed to bring it. He smuggled it, and he develops a strain that flourishes in Jamestown in the soil of Virginia. People plant it everywhere. They plant it, around their homes. They plant it in roads. I mean, it's selling like crazy. The smoking had become quite popular in England. It was the thing to do. Probably didn't realize the health effects at the time, but by the mid 1500s, smoking was a big deal. This was very profitable. Okay. Now, John Rolfe does go on to marry Pocahontas, and Pocahontas becomes a diplomat. And according to many accounts, it seems to be that the two did have feelings for each other, like they actually did care about each other. They were also both skilled negotiators. Rolfe was definitely older than her. Okay. John Rolfe takes Pocahontas to Europe, but tragically, she does not make the return voyage. She will die. Let's see, I believe it's 1612. Yeah. She will die at the age of 22. I'll mention the Disney movies one more time. Maybe you watched Pocahontas 2 when you were a kid, and there's that scene at the end where her and John Rolfe sail back to North America, and they're in each other's arms and they're in love. That never happened. She's dead. Okay, and John Rolfe himself will die in 1622. And the tragedy of Pocahontas and John Rolfe dying is, and Pocahontas probably died of smallpox, probably disease, right? Anyway, the tragedy of those two dying is they were skilled intermediaries, they were skilled leaders, good negotiation, representation between their peoples. Fortunately, when they die, and also another important person, very important person to mention who died, who's dead at this point as well, is Chief Powhatan. So you've lost 3 skilled leaders, really 4, because John Smith never returns. And so the relations between these groups of people really fall apart. And what we see is 10 years of on and off conflict. If you look at this title, this war, the Anglo-Powhatan War, you'll notice 1622 to 1632. That's a long period of conflict, right? It wasn't constant warfare, but pretty consistent warfare in those years. After Chief Powhatan died, John Rolfe's gone, Pocahontas gone, John Smith gone. The relations between the settlers and Powhatans worsened. Chief Opechancanough, there's a name for you, right? Opechancanough, who is Chief Powhatan's brother, is a little more warlike than Chief Powhatan. He strikes back at the continually expanding settlers, killing about 25% in the first half of this decade. Okay. And notice the settlers are giving him reasons, they're just continually expanding, right? And we talked a little bit yesterday about how, people are coming over and they're indentured servants and there's these promises of land and all those things. That's causing constant expansion and causing constant conflict with Indians. And tragically for African Americans is a reason why Virginians turned to slavery. So that's beginning here. That issue is beginning here. The first slaves come to Jamestown in 1619. So the response, typically the English, when they wage war, they wage it savagely. They believe in total destruction. They destroy villages. They kill families. So their response is to destroy the Powhatans. And so this powerful confederacy, originally at 40,000 people, by 1632, only 500 will remain. So the British were quite effective in their destruction of the Powhatan people. So that's the tragedy of this event. Okay. That's it. That's it. That's my lecture for today. So kind of short and sweet today. Didn't even quite go a half hour. Do you have any questions of me, kids? Okay, what I'm going to do, hopefully this recorded correctly and I didn't screw that up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post this on Google Classroom, hopefully shortly. And what I need you to do is just provide a key comment or question in the comment space, okay? And I'll respond to those and I'll give you 10 points for listening to me ramble today. Sound good? And guess what? You don't have homework from me again. Your only homework is to respond to this lecture. Oh my goodness. Now there's a reason for that. I got to put some documents together. So there's some documents I want to look at that deal with these events. So I'm going to put those together tonight and we're going to look at a couple of those tomorrow. And then there'll be a couple you'll look at on your own tomorrow night. So we're going to look at a couple in class tomorrow and a couple on your own. So you will have some work tomorrow night. It's going to be a couple documents. Probably won't be those huge, 20-page readings this time. But so you plan on having some work tomorrow night. You're going to look at a couple primary documents and answer some questions. Okay? All right, kids. The ones who I could see on here look like you were paying attention, so I appreciate it. Hope you have a great day. Don't forget to comment or ask a question about the lecture after I post it. Okay? Take care.